Tyrion gets a late birthday gift, Ramsay gives Roose a hug, and what is dead may never die. Tonight we're discussing episode 602 of Game of Thrones Home on What's on the Box! Hi, I'm James.
And I'm James.
And I'm Chelsea.
And this is What's on the Box, where we discuss the latest episode of your favorite TV show.
Guys, Game of Thrones is good again! That episode was great.
It was a great episode.
It was really good.
Another episode where we visited a ton of plots, and a lot of them were only one scene each.
The difference, though, is that instead of one quick scene each, we got short sequences of scenes. And I think that each sequence was carefully plotted in a way that last week's were not. And this episode was written by David Hill, not the creators. Maybe giving some of those writer duties over to someone else maybe freed the creators up to focus on some other things, like making sure that the dragons looked awesome.
However, if you did not know, David Hill was a writer's assistant who was promoted to writer after suggesting that Ollie be the one who kills Ygritte. So we have David Hill to thank for Ollie.
Did he earn his redemption this episode?
I think so.
This was a damn good episode.
It was really good.
Before we get too far into the episode, we saw a lot of comments from last week's kind of critical of how critical we were about the show. And we want to say we love this show.
We love this show. Now that Mad Men's over, this is probably our favorite show on TV.
It's only because we love it so much that we are critical of it.
I think it's like being disappointed when your kids do something stupid and you love your kids, but you get mad when they make dumb choices.
You want them to be better.
Right, exactly.
You want them to be better than bad pussy.
God damn it.
No sand snakes.
No sand snakes!
This is jumping ahead, but I don't care. Just how awesome the Iron Islands were.
Sure, we can start with that.
Yeah, I mean, we had the opportunity to go to the Iron Islands, I think, earlier in the show's run, and instead they chose Dorne. I was concerned with being away from the Iron Islands for so long, coming back to them and how they were gonna handle it, and what is this world gonna be like? But, oh man, it was so good. It was so well handled.
The War of the Five Kings is now technically over.
It's officially over. The fifth king has been killed. That means Balon won.
He did. He won by not doing anything, really.
And Balon Watch is over.
Now our watch has ended. In the books, Balon dies long before this, before Joffrey even.
Off screen.
So we've been waiting for this moment for a very long time, and it finally happened. And his brother, Euron, not named in the episode proper, but that's his brother Euron, is the one who killed him.
I really liked that scene on the bridge. I thought that Euron was appropriately menacing. I really enjoyed the way that that scene was blocked. Balon was kind of bracing himself on the bridge and not sure-footed. Euron says, "I am the storm," and he looks totally comfortable on that bridge. And I think that that makes him more imposing and more threatening. And again, like I said before, it's a sequence where we have a problem introduced with the scene with Balon and Yara, and then we follow Balon, and then we get Euron, and we get a resolution to that scene. Then with the funeral, and we have this complete sequence with a complete story that tells a small segment of plot. We are not propelling things forward. It had an exciting moment with the death of Balon, but it had a pace that let the characters be the characters. And that, I think, was one of the biggest differences between this episode and last week.
Great introduction for Euron. I'm already very invested in him as a character.
I think he's gonna be a huge fan favorite.
Sexy pirate.
Sexy? Well, is he sexy?
He's got that kind of mutton choppy beard thing going.
You couldn't really see him. I can't confirm if he's sexy or not.
We also meet Damphair, what looks to be Damphair,
Which is another uncle of Yara's.
We have seen a drowned priest in the show before in season 2 with Theon giving him kind of like a baptism, but this is a different character. This is what looks to be a more important character, and what I think is another of Yara and Theon's uncles, Balon's younger brother, Damphair or Aeron.
The conviction with which he invokes the King's Moot implies that he has an importance beyond just being someone who's presiding over that funeral.
And y'all gonna love the King's Moot.
Oh, I'm so excited.
So let's rewind a little bit and go to Bran and his flashbacks that open the episode. We get to see a young Ned and Uncle Benjen playing around in Winterfell.
Oh man, if you could have heard the noises we all made when that scene first started. I think we all involuntarily squealed.
We see Ned and Benjen sparring in the yard, and Bran names them, but the older kid kind of coaching them on is probably Brandon Stark, right?
And what I think is interesting, if you notice, Bran is wearing the exact same outfit that Brandon Stark is wearing, if it is Brandon Stark. I think that's a neat visual connection to kind of hint it.
Because Bran was...
He was named for
Brandon.
Brandon Stark, if you forgot, was Ned Stark's older brother who was killed by the Mad King Aerys, along with Ned's
father. And Brandon Stark was originally betrothed to Catelyn.
He is the one who fought Littlefinger
Yeah.
and gave him a scar.
And also, fucking Lyanna just being a badass and awesome at stuff.
I paid a lot of attention to costumes and hair because I think they tell such an interesting story. And I love that Lyanna's hair at the ends, it's almost blonde because she's outside all the time and she's always riding her horse. I thought that was a nice little touch.
Yeah.
We also see old Nan, less old Nan.
Middle-aged Nan.
She tells young Hodor or Willis he's not allowed to spar with them. It made me kind of think of Micah, the butcher's boy. You know, just these lower class citizens. That's not their place. They don't get a sword and shield.
But it's also more of, in the same way that Arya kind of befriended Micah, the Starks don't kind of see that. They just treat people as people.
And that's why we love them so much, and that's why they kill them so much.
And that scene really, as fun as it is to see the young Starks, is about Bran learning to use his magic ability from the Three-Eyed Crow.
The recast Three-Eyed Crow.
Yeah, Max von Sydow, who brings such an imposing kind of presence. He doesn't really do a whole lot, but he just has this kind of aura of wise old sage, and I think it's great casting.
And they also redid the character design for Leaf, the child of the forest, from the last time we saw these characters, and I don't know if I like Leaf's redesign.
I don't know if any of us are a fan.
No,
She looks like a lizard.
She looks like something out of Star Trek. I think it's jarring, and I bet a lot of casual viewers were probably just watching and were like, wait, what was that?
How she looked previously was very otherworldly and haunting. And how she looks now is how I was afraid they were gonna look.
The problem is, though, that they cast a child who grew up over the last 3 years. They can't have someone who's an unaging child. You can see that in Bran. Isaac Hampstead Wright is a man now.
Yeah, he is.
And his voice is totally different. He's much bigger, which plays nicely in the scenes where he kind of gets to walk around in his visions.
Or when he's laying down like sexy Bran. Draw me like one of your French Starks.
Mira, I have powers. Forget about your dead brother.
Also in that scene, a little bit of a foreshadowing to the Iron Islands.
It is beautiful beneath the sea, but if you stay too long, you'll drown.
I think there was a lot of foreshadowing in this episode. Obviously, what is dead may never die. There's some foreshadowing in the Bolton scene with killing the Lord Commander and how that'll unite the North.
In what way?
I think that killing Jon is dead. Jon is now released from his vows as a man of the Night's Watch, which means that he is free to be maybe Jon Stark if the North chooses to follow him in rebellion against the Boltons. I think that line from Roose could be foreshadowing.
I also love the contrast of the Boltons being like, killing the Lord Commander, holy shit, that'd be fucked up, you know?
Let's talk about the Bolton scene. That was a big moment in this episode.
Something had to give there, but I didn't expect that now.
I think it makes sense though. The last episode in particular and leading up to this season, Roose has been really chiding Ramsay. He's been talking down to him, disciplining him, and I just don't think that Ramsay is the type of person who's gonna sit there and take that.
Almost every single thing that Roose said to Ramsay from the moment that they reunite has been a threat in some way or another, and I think that Roose just had an amazing amount of confidence that Ramsay wasn't going to do anything about it, and he did something about it.
I was about to use the metaphor of mistreating a dog and being surprised when it bites you, which I realized that's very appropriate.
Well, Roose even says if you act like a mad dog, you're gonna get treated like one. And Ramsay just made sure that didn't happen. At least at Roose's hands.
I think Bastard Bull is gonna happen this season.
Bastard Bull!
Bastard
hype.
Bull!
That is the theory that it'll be Jon Snow versus Ramsay Snow at the end of this season.
Also known as Snowball.
Snowball!
I'm sad to see Michael McElhatton go. I think he was a great Roose Bolton and brought such an intensity to a character that really demanded a quiet intensity.
That was very prevalent in the Red Wedding.
For sure.
But as far as in-universe goes, Roose was also kind of the one holding Ramsay's leash. And now that he's gone, Ramsay is kind of just able to do whatever he wants, presumably with the backing of House Karstark. I was a little surprised that Lord Karstark sat there while Ramsay just murdered Roose in front of him, but I guess it makes sense that he would want to take the most drastic measures possible against the Starks and the rest of the North after what Robb did to his dad.
Roose playing the long game to subvert Robb wasn't enough of an immediate reaction for the Karstarks. If young Karstark is anything like his dad, then things need to happen very quickly for him to be satisfied, and I think that Ramsay is the Bolton to play the quick game versus the long game.
But that's assuming Lord Karstark is anything like his dad, and I think there's some ulterior motive.
Are you talking about the Great Northern Conspiracy?
Why, yes, in fact, I am talking about the Great Northern Conspiracy.
I think the fact that Ramsay name drops the Karstarks, the Umbers, and the Manderleys is a huge hint that we might actually get the show to do some Great Northern Conspiracy stuff.
And that is the theory that a bunch of northern lords and houses are conspiring against the Boltons to reinstall the Starks as the Lords of the North.
As the King in the North.
As the King in the North.
It's my favorite theory from book or show. This is even going back to the letter that Stannis gets at the Wall. Bear Island knows no king but the king in the north whose name is Stark.
We've seen in a trailer a clip of Davos at Bear Island. So we know that the Mormonts who hail from there are going to come into play. They're Stark loyalists.
We can maybe assume that all of these northern houses, they're gonna be backing Ramsay to go up to the Wall, and they're gonna side with him in Bastard Bowl, but then they all just kill Ramsay.
I cannot wait.
We're just all over the place, but this episode is just that good.
This is how I know an episode is good and written well, when we can't talk about one part without talking about other parts.
There are thematic ties.
There are even plot ties. When the show is at its best, it has this through line of some kind of mystery. There's something unknown. In season 1, it was Jon Arryn and the parentage of Joffrey and his siblings. And now we have this through line of like, just what is going to happen? What are people's motivations? Who are they supporting? And it's getting back to that kind of political intrigue that the show has kind of been missing for a little while.
That's why I love this show so much, and that's why I get frustrated with certain episodes, because they don't do any of that. That's what I'm here for.
But this was such a great example of having the huge, like, oh shit moments.
Yeah, with the political
politicking.
maneuvering.
Yeah, no one expected the Roose Shiv. That was a huge, oh shit moment, but it still was grounded in who is controlling the North, who is controlling Winterfell.
Can we just have a second of silence for Fat Walda? I love Fat Walda, and I saw it coming from a mile away.
Yeah, the second the Maester came in the room.
And Elizabeth Webster killed it in that scene, acted the hell out of it.
Oh God, so good.
She's so good, and she's just so sweet. Like, I want her to be my mom.
Let's talk about King's Landing, I guess.
There was some great stuff there. I love how the undead Gregor Clegane Kingsguard, who will not speak until all of her Grace's enemies are defeated, starts with the dude who wagged his dick at Cersei, and that counts as one of her Grace's enemies.
I just wasn't sure where that was going at first. We just plopped right in the middle of this weird Westerosi stand-up. And like this open mic. It's like, what is that? We're at a point now where we're rooting for Gregor and Cersei.
I think that's a testament to how successful her walk was from last season.
And how frustrating the High Sparrow and his arrogance is.
When Jaime is squaring off against the High Sparrow, and the High Sparrow doesn't have any kind of like fear of Jaime, Jaime's kind of taken aback by that.
I think he thinks that the High Sparrow is out strategizing him. That's not Jaime's strong suit at all.
If he had two hands, he'd take all those guys out.
He could. He could take that whole room.
Yeah.
But now that he has to mostly rely on his smarts.
It goes all the way back to when Tyrion talks about the gifts that his siblings have versus his intelligence, and how he says that a mind needs books like a sword needs a whetstone. Jaime's never sharpened his mind. He's just out of practice, and now that he can't rely on his sword hand, he's got to try to outsmart this guy, and he doesn't know how to play it.
Watching Jaime play the game is like watching him play a board game against someone where every time he's like about to make a move, the person he's playing against goes, oh.
And it looks like Cersei finally got her way in that Tommen is coming to her for guidance on how to rule.
I think it's cool too to see how Cersei's decision to confess, putting herself through the horrific experience that was her walk, is starting to pay off. Not only with Ungregor, but with Tommen. Tommen first wants to go to Marjorie, but Marjorie has not yet confessed and the High Sparrow refuses. However, he's free to go talk to Cersei. And that's exactly what Cersei wanted.
There was a lot of directorial focus on a thread in Cersei's dress. Chelsea, you mentioned it's the same mourning dress that she wore to Joffrey's funeral.
It's the same black dress she's wearing in season 4. And we were all kind of going nuts trying to think if there was some deep meaning to this thread.
Because there are two close-up shots on it.
very
It's so specific.
Could be a reference to threads of fate, like Greek mythology.
Especially with just last episode, she was talking about fate and prophecies. or it could even just be, I don't know how often she was planning on using that
That's
dress.
literally what I was gonna say, maybe just signifying that she's worn that dress a bunch and it's just starting to fall apart.
Yeah.
That's
really
my favorite
interesting,
reading
yeah.
of that, I think.
If you guys have any ideas of maybe something we missed with those very specific shots, please let us know in the comments below.
But I think that's just further evidence of the improvement of this episode over the previous one. The fact that we can see that directorial intent and discuss it, and it has multiple meanings at a character level, is great.
Especially because Lena Headey is God.
Lena Headey's great.
Just the Lena Headey appreciation minute.
It is.
I do want to point out really quickly, Marcella was wearing gold at her funeral. When Cersei received her prophecy from Maggie the Frog at the beginning of last season, she told her, referring to Cersei's future children, gold will be their crowns, gold will be their shrouds.
Let's talk about the other Lannister sibling, Tyrion, over in Marine.
Anything with Tyrion and dragons makes me really happy. I just think it's so sweet, and I love that he's always been like super into dragons. But here's what I think is gonna happen. Since Daenerys is gone, we don't know when she's gonna come back. Tyrion just unchained the dragons. Like, he's letting them roam free in hopes that they'll be able to feed and grow bigger. I think one of them's gonna die while Daenerys is gone, and then Tyrion's responsible. It would be awful because Tyrion loves dragons so much.
That scene was so sweet, where he's talking about how he asked his uncle for a dragon. It could be small like me. Peter Dinklage, when he's petting the dragon, gives this subtle smile, and it's so masterful, especially when you think about the fact that he's really acting to nothing. It blends so perfectly, and it gives just this little hint of the glee that he has underneath the terror that he's next to this killing machine.
This scene also adds a little fuel to the idea that maybe Tyrion's a secret Targaryen.
Real quick before we get to the very exciting Jon stuff, holy shit. Sansa, Theon, Brienne, and Pod are hanging out in the north somewhere, and Theon ends the scene leaving them. And that leaves me very excited for the rest of Sansa's storyline this season, because now she's free to have agency and take control of her situation.
Having Theon ask for permission to take a horse and kind of subjugate himself to Sansa
May I take one of the horses?
was a really good decision, and kind of a way of kind of handing off control of the situation between the two of them.
I think it's significant that Theon asks permission to take something before heading home to the Iron Islands, where they don't do that. They don't ask for stuff, they take stuff.
They pay the iron price, not the gold price.
And I also think it's interesting that he presumably is going to make it back in time or around the same time as the King's Moot.
I want Theon to go back to the Iron
Yeah.
Islands because I want to see how that character responds to that and how the other characters respond to Theon. Theon technically has the best claim.
But he is also a broken shell of a man.
Right, I'm really pumped now for the Theon story in a way that I haven't been probably since season 2.
I am sad that Brienne doesn't mention the Hound by name when she's talking to Sansa, because I think that would be a tragic moment for Sansa if she learned that Brienne fought the Hound and left him to die because he was so kind to her and saved her twice.
I think they're gonna pull that trigger later. What I do love about Sansa and Brienne right now is when they were talking about Arya, and Brienne mentions that Arya wasn't dressed quite like a lady, and Sansa says, oh yeah, she wouldn't be. And Brienne is someone who doesn't dress like a lady, and I think there's like such a nice connection there. Maybe Sansa finds that really comforting right now. And I love the idea of Brienne being Sansa's knight that she's been wanting this whole time.
Speaking of Arya, we check in with her real fast. I feel like this season Arya's story is much like last season in that it's just gonna crawl along little by little each episode. She got a little bit of promotion this episode with like, you're no longer a beggar. It reminds me of last season when for one episode she'd be washing a corpse and to be like, no, you're not gonna do that anymore.
That was the only scene that wasn't a sequence. The scene from last week and the scene from this week could have been connected with the scene from next week, and we would have gotten a great sequence.
This was the one part of the episode that just felt like, okay, stuff happened.
We're checking in with someone who's, high on the call sheet.
Finally, Jon.
He's back.
He always comes back.
Holy shit though, what a wonderful
Oh my
scene.
God.
Well, we do have two sequences here.
Yes, I'm gonna say a Davos sequence and a
Mel
Melisandre
sequence.
sequence. Yeah.
The Davos one is earlier on in the episode when Alistair's still trying to coax him out just for some warm mutton and a nice horse to ride home on. The 1-1 crashes the party with the other wildlings.
Oh man, I think the whole Beyond the Wall Castle Black storyline from the beginning has been about these kind of real exciting high fantasy moments. moments. Even though there were dragons with Dany, I think Jon's the most high fantasy hero, and this was a very like exciting high fantasy sequence, and I really liked it.
Although I love that Ollie runs forward with a sword and they're able to just grab him.
This is the first time that I've felt for Ollie, because Tormund is the wildling that led the crew that murdered his family.
Don't give a shit. I'm not saying that his motivations aren't justified. I'm saying that I don't identify with Ollie.
You identify with the murdering wildling?
I think that the fact that I don't identify with someone whose parents were murdered in front of him is a flaw of the characterization of Ollie.
Then the later sequence, we got Davos giving Mel a pep talk.
Oh, I loved that so much. Davos is so sweet.
Davos's pep talk, which is wonderful, is just more Davos finding a cause to attach himself to.
You've compared him to Ned Stark before.
We were talking while we were watching about, I worry about Davos making it through the series. I think he will, because he's a foil to Ned. He has the same kind of sense of loyalty, sense of duty and honor that Ned had, but he doesn't have Ned's kind of tragic flaw of a stubborn bullheadedness and a devotion to those ideals. The fact that he was able to switch his loyalties from Stannis to Jon briefly and then to Melisandre, who he straight up tried to stab to death at one point, shows that he has a flexibility that Ned did not. Ned was so rigid in his loyalty to loyalty itself and honor itself, it led to his death.
It was obvious that Jon was coming back. It was, as you said, TV's worst kept secret. But I do think that those sequences were well directed. Every shot of his body laying there was so suspenseful, and you were just waiting for something to happen, and for so many of them, nothing did happen.
I've already seen a few people complain that it wasn't surprising, it was so predictable, but here's the thing is I don't think Jon's death and resurrection is meant to be a giant surprise or a giant shock. I think it's a mechanic to get him out of his Night's Watch duties.
The most suspenseful shots for me were the shots of Ghost. We had kind of speculated before whether or not Ghost would be involved in somehow in bringing Jon back, and whether or not Ghost would actually be sacrificed in some way to do it, and I was so afraid seeing those shots of Ghost's body rising and falling with his breath that we would see a breath go out and then Jon come back and that'd be the end of Ghost. But instead, Ghost wakes up, Jon wakes up, and I think the implication there is that Jon was a ghost.
Especially because, as you said, Jon wakes up in a fashion very similar to how Bran would wake up from his warging dreams earlier on in the show.
I think we're going to see soon with Arya a discovery of that ability. Undeniably, there was a terror on Jon's face when he woke up. Maybe it's because he was dead. Maybe it's because he was convinced that he was a wolf.
Well, regardless, I'm so excited that that plot has moved forward as fast as it has.
They couldn't drag that out.
And I'm glad that they didn't try to. And I know that next episode, we're going to touch on it some more, along with some other very exciting sequences that we've been looking forward to for a very long time. And that sequence may be involved with the next episode's title, Oathbreaker. So until then, I'm James.
And I'm James.
I'm Chelsea.
And this has been What's on the Box?
What happened? I think you should subscribe. If a girl subscribes to our channel, she'll always have new videos. Why have you sent me this channel? You should subscribe, Ramsey.
If someone is planning on unsubscribing from our channel, I want to hear it.
And now you comment. Now I subscribe.
RLJ, motherfucker!